So, in that conversation, we have the deputy mayor's, CAO's office, CLA's office, and the performance management unit sitting down with every department trying to zero-based budget every department. So, in that conversation, there are some departments, and you want to pass that, that'd be great. We have some departments where we are literally doing consolidations / eliminations, right? So the Human Service Department last year was made up, it's made up of the Human Relations Commission, it's made up of the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families, it's made up of the Commission on the Status of Women. The Human Services Department is going from 26 staff down to 0 staff on the general fund. Right, so Human Services Department made up of Human Relations Commission, Commission on the Status of Women, Commission on Children, Youth, and their Families. All of them are going to keep the commission in place, so there'll be a forum. All of them are going to be staffed over at CDD with staff that come from the consolidated plan. So it's federal dollars are going to staff these 3 commissions. We're going to go from 26 positions on the general fund to 0, right? Some of them are actually going to be getting a promotion, and I can explain that later, but the Commission on Children, Youth, and Families has 12 brilliant people that know about anti-poverty programs. Right now, they oversee about $500,000 of anti-poverty work in the city, but in the Community Development Department, we have about $35 million that we put into anti-poverty programs through a new system we just rolled out on family source centers, and it's going to have oversight of those family source centers will be the Commission on the Children, Youth, and Families, along with required entities that exist under the federal government, the Community Advisory Board, the Citizen Unit Participation. We're right now going through the process of creating a consolidated program. Human Relations Commission, we're taking every bit of their work, so there's been a transgender task force that's been working for 2 years making recommendations to LAPD. Right, Sharon Buckman is now over at CDD and is free to kind of carry that piece of work. And we can go through every single tiny piece of work, how we're making sure that it's ending up or it's finding a home, but all of it is off the general fund. Environmental Affairs Department is another one of the departments that we're going through this again, this sort of internal consolidation. Part of it is going to building safety. They have the responsibility as the local administrator of all of our, every transfer station. They have to be renewed every 5 years. That's going back to building and safety. Some of it's going to Bureau of Engineering. Some of it's going to go, responsibility is going to go to the mayor's office on a sustainability of this. But the pieces of work are going to continue, but off of the general fund. There's, I think, a few positions left on the general fund with EAD. Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. So the Department of Neighbor Empowerment will be, at the end of this process, if it were to stay a standalone, would be the smallest department in the city of Los Angeles. There are certain things you need when you have a small department, but let me just give you what the internal conversation becomes when we start saying, what about keeping done the Department of Neighbor Empowerment as a standalone entity? So in that conversation, we looked at 5 options as the pressure came at those of us in the mayor's office that are responsible for keeping these pieces of the puzzle in place. There are 5 ways forward for the Department of Neighbor Empowerment. One is reduce the positions, the 38 positions, minus the 2 ERIPs, down to 16 positions is what's being proposed right now. And we're going to go, I can zero-based budget those 16 positions. You have it in your hands what they look like right now. If that were to stay a standalone, you'd probably need another 4 or 5 positions to be able to operate. So that conversation is a viable conversation, but so you have the standalone, smallest department in the city. You have the second proposal, which is to look at it, consolidate it with the city clerk's office. The experience was, hey, we're bringing elections there. Can we bring some of the contract management function? Can we bring some of the other responsibilities to city clerk? Quite honestly, we've been hearing from a lot of people, which is neighbor councils, met the city clerk, got a sense of the city clerk. It really is a pretty bureaucratic environment. It's not necessarily a good home for an entity that needs to be able to be agile and flexible to actually support neighborhood councils. So quite honestly, I don't think it's really in the running right now. There's also talk about we do this round of elections and then we evaluate. And maybe the next round of elections, we do go back to a contracted out independent election administrator process, but that's a conversation down the road. We want to make sure these elections stay in place, and you need to fight to keep the elections in place, given how much work, how much effort's gone into them from my point of view. So I think this is probably off the table. We looked at the ITA, the technology office, Innovation Technology Office. It's got a great new general manager from the private sector. We thought a lot of the work could actually be web-based in terms of the education, web-based in terms of the funding program, web-based in terms of the training programs. We thought that would maybe be a good fit. But then we also have a separate experience of dealing with ITA, and the platform for all of our websites are just so painfully limited. We as a mayor's office are trying to find a way to take our website and put it out into the private sector with, digital, with there's a number of different places. So, it doesn't seem like a great place. We'll leave it on the table for now. Okay, you're gonna die when I tell you this one. We actually looked at the possibility, just like we took the Gang Reduction Youth Development Office into the mayor's office to try to help move it forward. We looked at bringing it into the mayor's office. I'd rather shoot myself personally, but I was willing to look at taking that bullet if it really made sense. I think we looked at it for about 2 days, and I think quite honestly, the first people who would say no would be City Council, because this is a consolidation under Section 514 of the charter, which needs a 2/3 vote of the City Council, and quite honestly, they would be most concerned about the idea of the mayor's office having a closer relationship with neighborhood councils than they do, and there being occupying armies inside their turf. I think it just would not play out, right, politically, but in terms of providing support for neighborhood councils and helping them penetrate the departments where we have control, there's certain things to be said for it, but guess what? It's going to knock that one right off, right? And so the last place we looked seriously, and it was in our heads from day one as a possibility, is the Community Development Department. The Community Development Department has relationships with 180 nonprofits, right? Has contract management relationships, also has staff that provide direct services, so they have the Youth Opportunity Movement, has a number of direct services as well as contract relationships to function. And so there's some analogies between what CDD does, providing support for nonprofits, and what CDD could do to provide support for what are really 90 startup nonprofits all across the city, in a sense. And so we look very, very closely at this. So the two that are really viable is the standalone and the CDD alternative. And what we're looking at is we believe that eventually all tiny departments are going to get lost. There is a moment to look now, to think through the hard decisions about how to protect CDD. CDD doesn't have a single general fund position in CDD. It will be taking general fund positions, 16 of them, and transferring them into a standalone unit. The department would be called the Community Development Department / Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. In a sense, you would literally, the Community Development Department is an ordinance created department, as